everybody, welcome to another Liminal Spaces video. So today I'm going to do a countdown of my top 20 favorite sci-fi films. A couple of disclaimers real quick. Number one, I of course have not seen every sci-fi film ever made. So this is an ever-growing, ever-changing list. At least I hope it is. It gets harder as you get older. I'm sure you guys understand. But this is where I'm at right now. So it's kind of fun. Also, I do want to state that these are kind of like I chose to not put the same director on the list twice, even though there are several films that I enjoy by specific directors that are probably really in my top 20. I just wanted to make sure to cover a wide base, and that would allow me to talk about other things. So really, this is more of just a discussion of great sci-fi movies rather than a strict countdown, but I am going to put it in a countdown format. I'm going to start off with some honorable mentions, because there's a ton of great sci-fi movies, of course. District 9 is a great sci-fi film. It's a really dark film. It's an important movie that I think everybody should see because it talks about people being shoved into ghettos, even concentration camps. You can go that far with this thing. It's a dark, depressing film, and it kind of runs. This is a thing that I kind of notice for younger writers. Writers have a tendency to create the perfect situation to prove their point. And life isn't always that black and white. For instance, if you go watch a new playwright festival, right, with young playwrights writing 10-minute plays, you're probably going to see a play about a staunch religious Republican politician who has a gay son, right? That scenario. And I'm not saying that could never happen, of course. I'm sure it's probably more common than we realize. But it's set up so perfectly to point out kind of the hypocrisy of privilege and that kind of stuff, that it just makes it easy to prove the point. And I feel like District 9 kind of falls into this, because what you've got is this I guess I don't know, colonialist. I'm not sure how that character, what that character truly represents, but they're like a social worker, right? And they show up to the camp and they're doing their job while all these poor creatures are living in this horrible situation. And they get infected with some kind of a poison that turns them into one of the people that needs to live there, right? They're forced to walk a mile in the other person's shoes, right? Which makes the situation, if that were possible, that would make the situation much easier to fix, I believe. If everybody could understand what everybody else is going through, that would be a paradise, right? But that's not really a thing. I hate to say it, right? Now, of course, you can go really extreme and you can say, well, what if Germany won World War II? And then they didn't just go from attacking a specific group of people, they just started attacking everybody for whatever reason they wanted. And of course that is legit, right? We don't want a world where somebody has supreme power and they just destroy everything. But to me that's kind of an easy solution to a really big problem. And I'm glad the problem's being explored, but I'm not sure that that's the actual solution to the problem. But great film. It's on this list. Under the Skin, a really dark, terrifying science fiction film. Definitely worth seeing. It's not on the list because things that get that dark, I have a tendency to kind of shy away from. right? It kind of reminds me of like Requiem for a Dream. It's just a movie that just kicks you over and over and over again. It's dark. The Martian, the Martian needs to be as a recommendation. It's just a fun. I think it's a light film. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but it really is a ton of fun. A person is in a bad situation, but they come out of it because of their perseverance, right? And it's quite a journey. It's very enjoyable. I think the end gets a little bit crazy. It kind of jumps the shark, as they say. But overall, it's really a fun ride. It really is. Children of Men, great sci-fi. It's also really dark, right? This really strange subject where people can no longer have children. So, the craziest scene to me is there's a terrorist attack. This person has just come out of a coffee shop and they stop for a moment to get organized. They set down their coffee and then the shop blows up. And it's just this really kind of shocking glimpse into what it would be like to live in a world like that, which exists, right? Not here, not where we are, at least not often, but it exists, of course. Very interesting, cool movie. Annihilation, another just super dark. If you're on the bandwagon for this whole cosmic horror sci-fi thing, this is a great example of it. I mean, it's just terrifying. The bear is just the worst. It's crazy, very scary, very dark, and the ending is just twisted. It's an interesting film. I also put Pitch Black on the list. I think that Pitch Black gets overlooked quite a bit. It's a really well-made sci-fi movie. It's kind of just an adventure movie, you know what I mean? It doesn't have any mind-blowing science fiction, but it does take place in the future. It's on another planet. It's interesting because the sun, I don't know if they have two suns. I think they have two suns. So you're sort of getting into the three body problem thing where they don't know when it's going to be night. Also, that Isaac Asimov story that everybody's watching. They don't know when it's going to be night, but then when it does become night, all the night creatures come out, which is very rare, but the night creatures are super scary, and it's cool. It's an interesting film, and I really enjoyed it, and I think it deserves a little more than it's getting. Also, we play a game called Mutant Chronicles. It's a board game. Nobody's ever heard of it. It's super fun if you ever get the chance. But the later Pitch Black films kind of go into this whole, these aliens invade that have this really kind of gothic structure to their spaceships and their drop ships, and there's all these faces, and it looked a lot like Mutant Chronicles, which I really appreciated. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It deserves more than it gets. And of course, I've got on the recommendation list The Day the Earth Stood Still, classic film. And this is kind of what I mean by it opening up into a discussion about science fiction, because there's so many good classic movies that I don't put on my top 20, but of course, everybody should probably see. So the fact that I've mentioned The Day the Earth Stood Still kind of leads to films like The Village of the Damned or War of the Worlds. And I'm talking the 50s one, right? Not the new one. I didn't enjoy that so much, but this old War of the Worlds, Logan's Run, Fahrenheit 451, great classic sci-fi that everybody should see, because it may end up on your top 20 list, right? You never know. I've got other classics that are on the top 20, but I'm not going to mention them now, of course. Good. Okay, so those are the honorable mentions. So now we'll just get to the list itself. So number 20 for me, this is a weird one, is The Black Hole. Now, I chose The Black Hole, and this is kind of tough. I chose it kind of because it's a Disney film. And I'm not a Disney fan, right? Because I'm not a kid. And I know there are many adults who like Disney, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, honestly, Star Trek is kind of just Disney, really, right? But I'm not a big Disney fan. But the black hole is crazy. It's about a ship. Oh, I should say, there's going to be a ton of spoilers in this. I'll put it in the name as well. But beware, I'm going to talk about these movies. The black hole is about there's this little ship that's flying through space, and it stumbles across a black hole with a large ship that's orbiting it. And they realize that the large ship that's orbiting it is a ship that's been missing for a very long time, and it has a famous scientist on it. And in fact, on the little ship that the show started with, the daughter of that famous scientist is on the little ship. So they have a very vested interest into going onto this ship and finding out what's going on. And it's cool. It's crazy. There are some dumb little robots that do their Disney thing, right? There's this weird shooting gallery, and it's kind of dumb. But there is an evil robot called Maximilian that's just terrifying. Anthony Perkins is in the film, and he gets chewed up by Maximilian, and they go into the black hole. And this is probably one of the neatest things about the film. For a time, as kids in the 80s, there was a lot of speculation about what happens when you go into a black hole. Does it take you somewhere else, or do you meet aliens, or is it a wormhole, or does it lead to another universe? Like, what is a black hole? Is a black hole like a Big Bang somewhere else? Was our universe created because a black hole formed somewhere else, right? And now, of course, we think we know that a black hole is, of course, just a solid object that has such a strong gravitational force that it pulls everything in. So if you go in a black hole, you just die. That's it. There is nothing. You just die. And they did this crazy thing where they go into the black hole, and I guess they die because literally all the bad guys go to hell. Like Maximilian becomes the devil, right? With the scientist inside of Maximilian becomes the devil. And the whole crew is now in hell with Maximilian. And I felt kind of weird about that because I don't know that the crew was evil. So that was kind of a bizarre choice. But the people in the small ship who also get sucked into the black hole go to heaven. Like they literally, I think, see an angel. And they talk about how when you go in a black hole, you see the voice of God or something like that. Right? So it's this weird, you die, but I don't know. It's really cool. And I hate to say this because it might have jaded my idea about this film, but it's really cool for Disney, right? You'd never expect that coming from Disney. So I think it's definitely worth checking out. It's my number 20 on the list here. Also, I want to mention Tron. It's not on the list. Tron could have ended up on my list, but like I said, I want these to lead to other things. So The Black Hole leads to Tron, which is another film that you really should check out. It's good, especially for Disney. It's a good movie. Definitely worth seeing. Next up for me, number 19 is The Matrix. The Matrix was just such an important film, and I hate to say it, but I don't think that group of people has done anything really worth mentioning after. They've got this weird movie where there's this person who has to scrub toilets, and then they become a princess, and they realize that life is really hard being a princess, so they go back to scrubbing toilets, which I think is like the worst thing I've ever seen. Like, what kind of privilege do you have to suggest? It's like people saying money can't buy happiness, right? And I do understand that we can't live forever. I get that. But to suggest that I mean, it's atrocious, right? There are a lot of poor people on this planet, and it shouldn't be that way. It's kind of gross. But anyways, the Matrix itself really caused this kind of revolution for action sci-fi, and I do want to point out the action part of it because the action is really, I think, what drove that film forward. Specifically, honestly, that they made a Gap commercial. That's the first thing I saw that used this technology, where they had a person jump up in the air and then they froze the image. Now, when you freeze an image, you can't move the camera. It's impossible. If an image is frozen, that's the only way you can see it. But in this Gap commercial, they literally froze the image and then they would rotate around it, which just blew my mind. I had no idea how they could pull that off. And then, of course, in The Matrix, they used it a ton, right? Even bullet time, I think they were slowing down, but the camera was moving at the same speed. And of course, the way they actually did it was they just set up like 70 cameras in a circle, right? And then the person would jump up and all of the cameras would take a picture at the same time while they're up in the air. So each of those still frames, each of those camera pictures became a frame in the movie. So they could say, we'll show from this side first, then we'll move here, then we'll move here, then we'll move here, right? Brilliant, simple, brilliant solution. Expensive, right? Because you got to have all those cameras and they all got to be the same. But really, really intelligently well done. So the camera techniques in The Matrix, I think, are really what pushed it forward. The plot's fun. I guess it's like Alice in Wonderland, right? Or some kind of virtual reality thing, right? It's okay. It's all right. But man, the effects just blew my mind for that. And I that's why it's on the list for me. It's important for me. It's cool. Number 18 is Mad Max. So, of course, there's not a lot to say about these. It's kind of an apocalyptic future, right? And it's all about cars, supposedly. My biggest gripe with Mad Max, to be 100% honest with you, is he never drives his car. And I can't stand that. I hate that Mad Max is some weird guy laying in the sand with a chain on him. You know what I mean? Like, get in his car and drive around. But there's plenty of cars. There's plenty of cars in these movies. And he usually ends up driving a truck of some sort for a little bit. But there are so many great things in these movies. They're definitely worth checking out. Mad Max is an Australian film. It's unique. It's interesting. It's wonderful to see a bit of that culture kind of come through, you know, because you can't change your culture, right? You can try to avoid it, but the reality is it's you, you know. So you can see a lot of Australia in the film. It's really wonderful. And then, of course, they got Road Warrior, which got a much wider distribution. Still Australian, but released in America, released all over. And then we got Thunderdome. Not a great movie, but it's okay. It's okay. Once again, there's not enough cars in I mean, it's got to be about the cars. I hate to say it. It's a futuristic world where cars are what people have. It's how they fight, is with vehicles. And then, of course, you got Fury Road, which just exploded everywhere. Everybody loves it. Definitely worth checking out these movies if you haven't seen them. They're great. All right, 17 is The Thing by John Carpenter. The Thing is very interesting. It's just it's like Alien, right? An alien comes down, and instead of it being on a spaceship where they're trapped, I think on the North Pole. I think it might be the North Pole. They're in this little ice station, and they can't really leave because it's too cold outside. You know what I mean? And this alien is just wreaking havoc through everybody. It's got a dark ending. It's really a neat movie. The crazy thing about it that kind of makes it stand out is it uses practical effects. It's not made by a computer. Now, some people like to say that that's campy, but personally, I don't agree with that um, kind of translation of camp. I think that camp is its own thing that doesn't have to do with not wanting to spend the money to use computers, so you use practical effects instead. And computers weren't that. I mean, this is an old film, right? I don't know when the thing came out. Maybe like 82. Like it's back there, you know? So it uses practical effects, and that does make it look different than most of the films on this list. So beware of that, but it's wonderful to see them, you know? I'm I grew up a lot of my life watching practical effects rather than computers. So it's not much of a jump for me, but it looks different, just to say out loud. But it's great. And of course, John Carpenter's got all kinds of great stuff. Any of these could have been on the list. He's got Halloween, right, which is not sci-fi, it's horror, but a very influential, big, important movie. Big Trouble in Little China is a blast. If you haven't seen it, you totally have to see that. They Live is a good movie. Escape from New York, of course, is great. The Fog came out on 4K. There's all kinds of great John Carpenter. Definitely worth looking into if you haven't seen it. Okay, number 16, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I love this movie. This sort of weird paranoia that everyone around you is being taken over. And I'm talking about the 70s one. I love the 50s one, super fun, but I like the 70s one better. I like the ending of it a lot. And of course, it's got Donald Sutherland, but it's also got Leonard Nimoy, I believe, which is super cool to see, right? It's a fun, cool movie. It's definitely worth seeing. And the paranoia is just great for it. I really love it. Okay, on to number 15. The Man Who Fell to Earth. So, this is a cool movie. I believe this is the same guy that made Don't Look Now, which we made a video about earlier, a horror film. But this is a sci-fi film starring David Bowie, which is super cool and kind of rare. He's made some films. He was in Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, which is a great war film. He was going to be in Blade Runner 2049, but I think he was too sick. He was going to play the rich guy, the owner of the company, which I think maybe a person named Jared Leto played or something like that. I don't know. I don't know that other actor, but that scene, I don't know. David Bowie might have been able to save that scene, but it wasn't the best scene of the movie, that's for sure. But The Man Who Fell to Earth, great, weird sci-fi movie. It's from the 70s, I believe, early 70s. And it's just this crazy movie about this alien who ends up stuck on Earth and can look like a human. You know, they've got to put in contacts and stuff, but they can look like a human. And they just try to fit in while they try to escape from the Earth. And it's this kind of cool, heartfelt, good movie, which I think everybody should see. It's really good. I enjoyed it. There is a 4K version too, if you're into that. So that was 15, The Man Who Fell to Earth. 14, Brazil. So Terry Gilliam has done a few different sci-fi films, 12 Monkeys being one of them, of course, which is a great movie. Definitely recommend it. Brazil, I really love. Brazil is out there. It is a crazy film, and it's a dark film. The ending was so dark that the studio literally decided that they should give it a happy ending. So there's two versions of the film, the happy ending and the dark ending. And kind of a funny story why that happened. The film it takes place in the future where paperwork has taken over everything. Like people's dedication to filling out the right forms has just gone through the roof. And it's made our society just a mess. And there was like a catchphrase, and I can't remember exactly how they use it in the film, but it's something like no more paperwork or something. There's this revolution that's fighting against this idea. And when they did the screenings of the film, they would give people these forms to fill out to talk about whether they liked the film or not. And the screenings didn't go well. It is a super dark, super weird movie. But a lot of the forms, people literally wrote no more paperwork. They chose to not, I can't remember if that's the catchphrase exactly, but something like that. They chose to not fill out the paperwork. And the studio counted those submissions as negative responses, which is kind of silly. Because clearly the film affected them, right? Clearly they felt righteous enough to say, down with the man, I'm not filling out your paperwork, or whatever. But the film is great. It's this weird futuristic movie, and Terry Gilliam's great. There's not a lot of Terry Gilliam out there, but it's really weird stuff, right? Of course, he came from Monty Python, and he did 12 Monkeys. He also did Fear and Loathing. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is probably my favorite Terry Gilliam film. Terry Gilliam can really get caught up in his work. He can almost kind of become his own worst enemy as he's working through these things. The neat thing about Fear and Loathing is he didn't start the project. They just brought him in as a last-minute fix to a problem. And he did enough of the film that it's clearly a Terry Gilliam film, but it didn't allow him to kind of overanalyze and stress about things. He just had to get in there and get it done. And I think the product is just incredible. That's my favorite Terry Gilliam. But Brazil is a great film. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. Also 12 Monkeys, of course. That's Bruce Willis. It's a time travel movie. It's really good. The Terry Gilliam stuff's definitely worth checking out. All right, number 13 is Metropolis. So Metropolis is really, really old. It's possibly, and I have to say possibly, actually, I don't know. It's possibly the first full-length science fiction film. There's lots of short films right in the dawn of film, right? Film's not been around for very long. I think it's like, 125 years. I don't know. But the actual making of movies has not been around for very long. But there are some short films where people try to go to the moon. There's stuff out there. But Metropolis is an actual kind of full-length film. And of course, full-length means different things at different times, right? I believe it's a short film by today's standards. It's not a 3-hour epic that we're kind of used to now, right? It's probably like 80 minutes or something. I'm not positive, but it's a film, and it's about all these workers that work. It's in the future, and all these workers work in this mine, and there's a person who is trying to help them unite because they're being taken advantage of. It's basically slavery, and they do these amazing shots of these people just marching toward these huge elevators to go down. It's really brilliant to watch. And then they make a robot that's supposed to be the girl so they can replace her so that they don't have a union. And just all kinds of crazy stuff happens. But it's really good. It's really enjoyable. The imagery is just almost shocking as to how cool it looks and how organized and massive it is. It's very enjoyable. Definitely worth checking out. And of course, it uses practical effects. Right? So when you see the city, it looks kind of silly compared to today's stuff, of course. But I'm sure at the time, people were just shocked, Like they tell the stories of one of the first short films that was shown, just to show off what film could do. Somebody set up a camera on the edge of a train platform, and they just took a shot of a train arriving on the platform. So this train is kind of coming right towards the camera, but not really, because it's set up on the edge of the platform. The train doesn't hit the camera. It's just to the side. But as the train, when people would watch it, as the train came toward the screen, people literally jumped up out of their chairs to get out of the way, right? In case the train came crashing through and hit them. So it would just be shocking to see film. It's very interesting. So that's an important one, and it's on the list. That was number 13. Okay, number 12 is Terminator 2. So, James Cameron. James Cameron, I do not like James Cameron. There are many things I don't like about James Cameron. Mostly the direction that he went after Terminator 2. He went to, I think it was The Abyss, and then it might have gone straight to Titanic. In my opinion, he just gave up on good storytelling, straight up. Like, Titanic is so basic. It's so black and white. The villain is so evil. And the good guys are so good. That ridiculous scene where she's like, "Excuse me, I counted all the lifeboats and I counted all the people, and I'm beginning to realize that there might be more people than lifeboats." I'm like, what the hell? I mean, it's so. And it's manipulative too. He's very manipulative as a filmmaker. That whole scene where they're going down underwater. As the ship sinks, of course, it sucks everything down with it. And the guy explains to the girl, "We have to hold hands. If you let go of my hand, we will die." And the ship goes down, they get sucked underwater, and of course they let go. And the music swells, and everybody in the theater starts bawling. And then they both pop up. And the movie goes on, right? It was just crap. I mean, it's so bad. And I get that it's fun to watch the ship sink. I get that. And I get that it's Kate Winslet and Leonardo, nice people to look at. I understand, but seriously. And then, of course, Avatar, and I appreciate that it would be anti-colonist, I get that. But I can't believe that he just took a white guy and made him the savior of the whole group. Like, what a bunch of trash. Honestly, just trash. We went and saw the new one, and it's got like an hour in the middle of them playing in the ocean. It's all just nonsense, seriously. And it is beautiful to look at. And he got his start doing tech, That's where he shines. In my opinion, that's where he should be. He should be doing tech for films. He should have a director treat him like shit the way he treats all of his actors like shit, all of his crew like shit. Aliens 2 almost didn't get made because he was so crappy to the English crew. I mean, to not respect another culture and to not, because they couldn't have tea time, right? Which is a big deal for the English, I don't know. It's also like method acting, right? The idea that an actor would have the gall to say, "So I'm supposed to be in a wheelchair in this movie, so I'm not going to walk anymore. Just have the crew carry me around." Like, what the hell is wrong with you, man? I mean, acting is a job. You train to do it, and you should be a professional. If you can't act without turning into some kind of raging idiot, you shouldn't be an actor, period. And Hollywood should not support that kind of abuse, and he's abusive. James Cameron's abusive and pompous, and I don't know. But Terminator 2 and Terminator and even Aliens 2 are good sci-fi films and worth checking out, even though, you got to deal with that. Okay, good. Those are good movies. Number 11, Contact. Yeah, I really love this film. It's great. The sci-fi is a tiny bit lacking. It's more about the heart. And of course, I go that way anyway. You know what I mean? But it's kind of, I was slightly disappointed in the ending of the film because we don't really get to see anything, because the aliens say well, we don't want to scare you too much, so we're just going to look like you. Which is kind of a cop out. I hate to say it. It's the same thing that my brother was talking about when he was talking about the cosmic horror writer Lovecraft, when he was saying that I would describe it, but it would drive you mad, right, or whatever, right? I mean, it's a cop out. I hate to say it. And monster movies are hard. Don't get me wrong. The minute you show that monster, everybody's disappointed. I totally get it. In most cases, right? Sometimes the monster just blows you away. But in most cases, it's a disappointment, right? Lost, the TV show Lost is brilliant. It's so fun to watch. But eventually you begin to realize that he's never going to answer your questions, because if he does, you'll be disappointed. He's just going to keep stringing you along. And that makes you mad, you know? Even though you've been having a great time, that makes you mad when you realize you're not going to get the answers and you're not going to have your mind blown, because there is no answer that will satisfy you, you know? But Contact's great. It's about First Contact, of course, and it's about a group of scientists who are working and receive this contact, and then one of the scientists goes on to actually go into the spaceship. They send information how to build a ship. She goes in the ship. She meets the aliens. It's very cool, First Contact. It's more of a study of how humans would react to First Contact, which once again is slightly disappointing for a sci-fi brain, right? Gets a tiny bit Lord of the Flies every once in a while, but it's a great movie. If you haven't seen Contact, you really need to see it. You can also read the book by Carl Sagan, right? Great scientist, great teacher, really. I think that's Carl Sagan's strongest quality, is his ability to educate the people around him about the importance of science and the science itself. His TV show, which I'm not going to remember the name of now, it's excellent. We have the TV show, we have the DVDs, and we put it on constantly. Even if we're like, I'm tired, I want to fall to sleep, but I can't go to sleep yet, I'll put that on. It's brilliant. Check out the TV show. Check out the film. The film is great.